Exodus. Ex in Latin means out, like the English word exit. Odos, or hodos, is the Greek word for the way or the path, and it's found in the top line of the ROTAS square. The way out is Exodus, and Exodus is the journey from bondage, slavery in Egypt, through the desert. So the journey through the desert to freedom, the promised land. And on that journey, significant things happen, such as the 10 Commandments, the written knowledge, the tradition, as well as the 10 Orot, the Sephirot, the oral tradition, the Kabbalah.
Now Moses used to take the tent and pitch it outside the camp, far off from the camp, and he called it the tent of meeting. When Moses entered the tent, the pillar of cloud would descend and stand at the entrance of the tent, and the Lord would speak with Moses. And when all the people saw the pillar of cloud standing at the entrance of the tent, all the people would rise up and worship, each at his tent door. Thus the Lord used to speak to Moses face to face, as a man speaks to his friend. When Moses turned again into the camp, his assistant Joshua, the son of Nun, a young man, would not depart from the tent. The Lord said to Moses, "Come up to me on the mountain and stay here, and I will give you the tablets of stone with the law and commandments I have written for their instruction." When Moses went up on the mountain, the cloud covered it, and the glory of the Lord settled on Mount Sinai. For 6 days the cloud covered the mountain, and on the 7th day the Lord called to Moses from within the cloud.
In this film, we're going to go into another contemplation, and this contemplation is going to be the rotas from the perspective of Kabbalah. Kabbalah means to receive, and Kabbalah is the perspective from esoteric, what we could call esoteric Judaism. It's the perspective of receiving the knowledge about what's inside. We could say a knowledge about inner life. We could say a knowledge about being. This esoteric tradition, in its flowering, goes back to Moses. Moses' first trip up Mount Sinai to meet with the deity. In that meeting, he receives Kabbalah. He receives the oral tradition. That's the tradition within Judaism. And when he returns to where the people are gathered below the mountain, he sees that they're worshiping the golden calf. And so he decides that he'll go back up the mountain. Of course, he's furious, and that he needs to bring back something more concrete. And so he goes up the mountain and again comes back with the 10 Commandments, having received the 10 Commandments And the 10 Commandments are written. And there's now going to be a vehicle made for those 10 Commandments, which is the Ark of the Covenant. And that Ark of the Covenant is going to accompany the Israelites through the desert as they're on their way to the Promised Land. And in a sense, this tradition, some say, this oral tradition goes certainly back to Abraham, who's the founder, if you want, the initial inspiration of the three Abrahamic religions, Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, and the esoteric tradition as well. So there's some sense in the esoteric tradition, in the Kabbalah, Abraham's original name was Abram. And in order to become Abraham, he enters into a covenant with being, with God. And in this covenant, he receives this knowledge, and he undergoes a change of name indicating a change of inner state of consciousness. And so what becomes his name, the change is from Abram to Abraham. Abraham. An H, the letter H, which in Greek is the letter E, in Latin also the letter E. So in Hebrew, this letter is 5. It's the number 5 also. So Abraham gets this special letter attached. The letter in itself, Hey, in Hebrew, is the word for a window. So suddenly his Abram become Abraham as a result, we could say, of a kind of initiation, a kind of contract, a covenant with the deity, and the window now is there so that Abraham has the ability to receive the Kabbalah, receive information about inner life, see, if you want, with a capital big S-E-E, to see into the nature of being. There is also a tradition in Judaism, in Kabbalah, that the Kabbalah itself goes back to Adam and Eve. And this, of course, is picked up by Christian literature, Gnostic literature in particular, and we see some of this in the Nag Hammadi texts that were discovered in the last century. So what's interesting is that when we go to the 16th century, to the Zohar, we find references to this Kabbalistic tradition from Adam and Eve. And the Garden of Eden is referred to in the Zohar as the field of apples. And there's a whole sense of how magical, in a sense, the Garden of Eden was. So if you were to cut an apple horizontally, you would see in the center of the apple the 5-point star, or pentagram, what was called the pentagram in the Middle Ages. So this is interesting because, again, it's the number 5, and 5, of course, would be connected to this letter Hey, which is also in the name of God that Moses gets from the burning bush, Yod Hey, Vav Hey, the 26th letter, numbered letter of being, or of God. So there's connections here to Abraham, connections to Moses, connections to being, because the yod hey vav hey is the Hebrew word for being, the verb to be. And if you have the verb to be, the subject of the sentence, I am a man, man and I are the same. It's like an equal sign. So being is seen in language as a kind of field that underlies virtually everything. Let's go now to 3 arrangements of the blocks so that we can begin to contemplate the ROTAS square from the point of view of Kabbalah. So before you now is the entire ROTAS as we've looked at it from the beginning of the films. ROTAS, Oprah, Tenant, Arepo, and Sator. Now let's take a look at the E of Tenant in the ROTAS square. And the E of Tenant is the 5th letter of the Latin alphabet, so A, B, C, D, E, and the 5th letter of the Greek alphabet. So you have alpha, beta, gamma, delta, epsilon. So it's the E of epsilon. And the 5th letter of the Hebrew alphabet is a hey. So the hey is E. So the Hebrew would be Aleph, Bet, Gimel, Dalet, Hey, the palindrome Hey. In the Paleo-Hebrew alphabet, it looks like a backwards E. So let's take the top line of the ROTAS square and take the word ROTAS literally, and let's rotate the Paleo-Hebrew letter Hey. And if we rotate it once, we get the E, which is the equal, if you want, to the epsilon and to the E of the Latin alphabet. Then if we were to take it and to rotate it further, we could get what looks like a Latin M. So we have here 2 ways of rotating. First to what looks like a Latin E, and secondly what looks like a Latin M. Also, you might recall from the POTAS square from film 2, Dura Europus, the POTAS square's second line, the opera, had the P of opera, which was a pi in Greek. It looks like a little bit of an M. So that's probably so interesting because it's followed by the letter E of opera. So it's almost like it's a help that was put in, whoever put up that POTAS square, a help in terms of us identifying that M is also what could happen if we played a little bit with the Paleo-Hebrew alphabet and turned the E that was made in Latin into an M. Or we can also simply rotate, or rotas, rotate the Latin E into an M, and then get the name of the second book of Torah in Hebrew, called Shemot, the names. So the the second book, Exodus, is called Shemot in Hebrew. So let's see how we get Shemot. We start with the S of Rotas in the first line, and then go over one to the A of Rotas, and then down to the E rotated to the M, and then the OT of the top line of Rotas, the OT making it a plural. So we get Shamot, S-H-A-M-O-T, the plural of the word Shem. Shem is the word for a name. Here it's Sham, but remember that vowels can become any vowel in this code. Also, let's take a look at all of the letters here that make the word Torah. So in front of this square, let's just see if you can find them. I have T-O-R-O, T-O, the P as an R, O, T-O, the P as an R-E, T-A-R-E, T-E, the P as an R here, E, T-A-R-A, T-E-R-A, T-A-R-E. You might even have some more than that. Torah means to instruct, to explore, just what the Rotas square was designed for. Let's return to the beginning of the film. Let's return to Moses. If we look at the Rotas square and once again turn the E of Oprah to an M, we get the first letter of Moses' name. If we go up to the A of the top line of the square, the A in the Rotas can be an O. As we know, vowels in the code are fungible. They can become any other vowel. The consonants are what are really most important. So now we have M-A, and we can change that A to an O, M-O. And let's add the S of that top line, the S of Rotas. And we get M-O-S-H, Moshe. And let's end that with the A right next to it. At that top line, the A of Rotas. And we get Moshe, Moses' name in Hebrew. And if we read this M-A-S now from the S to the M, in other words, backwards, we start with the S of Rotas, we go to the A of Rotas, and then down to the M, the E turned into an M, in Oprah. And we get, if we read it backwards is Sum, S-U-M. So if we read it S-A-M, we get S-U-M, which is in Latin, I am. And I am is the verb to be, Yod He Vav He, the Shem or name of God given to Moses from the burning bush, which also occurs in Exodus, which is, again, in Hebrew, is sensationally named Shemot. Notice the Shem here. The Shem, the name. If you want Sum, I am. And that's called Hashem, the name, in the Hebrew tradition. And the names Shemot, which are in verse 1 of Exodus Shemot, are the names of the 12 tribes of Israel. Now let's take Moses, or Moshe. By the way, the letter S in Hebrew, Shin, the next to the last letter in the Hebrew alphabet, 22-letter alphabet. In Hebrew, the S, the Shin, can be pronounced as an S or an SH. So let's take Moshe, to the center of the ROTAS square, where he will be able to be face to face with the One. We know from film 1, Hen, the En in the center of the square is Greek, and it means the One. And the N is the non, or the none, in Latin. So he's there with the one and the none, face to face. And the word for face in Hebrew is phene. And there's an angel, Phineel, which is who is the angel of the face. But here we have just phene. And it's pronounced that P, E, and E is pronounced, the P is pronounced in Hebrew, the P is a flat P or a PH. The same as the S, as S and SH. So let's end film 4 with Moses and the Latin name. And we can get this Latin name from the first 2 lines of the ROTAS square, the ROTAS and the opera. So if we go up to opera and take the E of opera and make it an M, and then go up to the top line, ROTAS, and take the AS, so we have MAS, and then right above AS. So we have Moses, or Moses. And now let's take Moses down to the phene, the phene going up, and the phene going down, which is at the very center of the ROTAS square. And by the way, P-E-N also in Greek means pan or everything. So within the face-to-face, the phene, that's here at the center, we have amness, the En, the oneness. And it's all surrounded by En, which in Hebrew is An. the word in Hebrew for a cloud. The ROTAS square itself, it turns out, a kind of cloud, hiding the oral tradition of inner knowledge within it.